There is a side of the Philippines hidden away from the concrete and the blinding light of the cities, a world built on whispered incantations, the faint smell of oil and prayer, and the knowledge that every illness is not always what it seems. It is a world where faith is a weapon, and the fight against darkness is a daily reality. This is Paul, and you are listening to Stories Philippines podcast. Our story tonight centers on a young man we will call Elias. In the spiritual realm, he is known by his ritual name, Ego Sum, a Latin phrase which, in the context of esoteric Filipino practices, speaks to a spiritual calling rather than a claim of divinity. This is the world of the Manggagamot, the folk healer. Elias' path is not one he chose on a whim. It is a world of deep tradition, where powers are harnessed through devotion, and battles are fought not with fists, but with orison. Sacred prayers, often in Latin, passed down through generations. Elias' training was rigorous and fraught with unseen peril. Though he may have been virtudes, a term for those born with spiritual gifts, often inherited, the power to genuinely heal and protect had to be earned. This process began with a devotion, a grueling, continuous spiritual practice that required strict adherence to prayer and the avoidance of sin for 48 straight days, starting on the first Friday of a month. This commitment is not a casual one. Elias describes the temptations that emerged during this time, distractions that would call him away from his prayers, reasons that would suddenly appear to break his solitude. To fail meant starting over, a sign that the power was not yet ready to settle. He learned quickly that the process could be physically dangerous. He witnessed others who failed in the recitation of the sacred words, the orison, suffering from sudden nosebleeds or intense headaches. This is a crucial detail. In this world, words carry weight. Mispronouncing a holy phrase is not just a mistake. It can be an energetic backlash, an explosion of power the body isn't ready to handle. This speaks to the immense, volatile energy that these prayers are believed to contain. After completing his devotion, Elias knew he couldn't dive straight into healing. He had to palakas, to strengthen himself, because the enemies he would face were not just fevers and coughs, but inkanto, nature spirits, curses, and the dark magic of kulam. His tools reflected his commitment. The most important was his San Benito medallion, not a cheap metal necklace, but one made of copper, inscribed fully with the powerful Latin text. He learned to feed it with prayers and blessings, and to wear it close to his skin, under his clothing. The medallion was his spiritual barometer. If it pulsated or grew hot in a cool environment, it signaled the proximity of danger or a dark presence. The social science symbol, Sanosidi. Later, he acquired a Batu Omo, a mystical stone, likely a mutia, sourced from the sacred, enigmatic Mount Banahaw, a mountain long associated with mystics and spiritual brotherhoods. The rounded stone offered protection and could be submerged in water to instantly create a healing tonic. The early stages of his work, Elias recounts, involved a simple but essential process, determining the source of the affliction. Not every sickness is demonic, after all. He describes a case involving a feverish child who cried every morning. The traditional method for diagnosis is chillingly direct. The practitioner takes a glass of ordinary water, prays over it, and gives it to the patient to drink. The taste determines the culprit. The illness is caused by a demon or devil, diavolo, Tolti. The illness is caused by a human taua curse or dark magic. the realness, is caused by an aswang, or a similar predatory entity. A child in Elias's first case simply said the water was sweet. A clear diagnosis. The illness was a normal affliction, not spiritual in nature. Elias gave the child his blessed healing water, and the next day the child was well. A simple act, but a profound success. Spiritual warfare in the modern age. Elias's stories quickly moved beyond simple healing and into the chaotic, contentious world of spiritual practitioners themselves. In the Philippines, the world of Karunungan, knowledge/wisdom, is often a battlefield. He speaks of the conflicts between practitioners, sometimes light against dark, but often right against right. This conflict often arises from fundamental disagreements, like the ethical boundaries of the practice. Elias and his mentor confronted a more famous healer who charged exorbitant fees, a violation of the sacred tenet that spiritual gifts should be shared, not sold. Donations, namunakras, are acceptable, but setting a price is considered corrupting. The confrontation led to online skirmishes, smear campaigns, and testing. This brings us to one of the most unsettling challenges for a spiritual healer today: the spiritual saboteur. Elias described a chat he received from a woman claiming she couldn't walk due to an injury. He asked the usual diagnostic questions. Is there a tree behind your house? A common dwelling for Inkinta. But her answers were evasive. She was not seeking help. She was probing. Elias quickly realized she was a follower, sent by the offended healer to test his power or waste his time. He simply ignored her, refusing to engage in what he saw as petty spiritual games. Perhaps the most astonishing account is the one where Elias and another practitioner entered a private spiritual study group. They were silent observers, recognizing the internal politics, particularly the administrator, who wished to be the sole authority. When a trusted associate of the leader confessed to being troubled and unable to sleep, the leader, Lobo, did nothing, but Elias and his colleague took action. Using astral projection, the ability to separate one's consciousness from the body and travel, they visited the suffering person. The next day, the colleague confirmed their visit, describing the help they provided. The associate was impressed, and the trouble stopped. However, their act of unsolicited, compassionate intervention was seen by the leader as a threat, an act of being too high and mighty. For their help, Elias and his colleague were immediately removed from the group, demonstrating that in the spiritual community, sometimes humility is your best protection against ego and conflict. Finally, Elias shared a stark reminder of the reality of spiritual warfare. While in an online group filled with all types, from healers to dark practitioners, Kumang Kukulam, he became embroiled in a conflict. A few days later, while occupied with a task, he was struck. A sudden, intense stabbing pain hit both his shoulders and his knees, forcing him to double over. The pain was immediately followed by a sharp pierce in his chest. This was a classic example of Palipadan, a form of dark magic, where a curse or hex is flown directly at a target, often using personal information or a photograph. Fortunately, in the spiritual world, one of the rules of engagement is that one cannot heal oneself. Elias had connections. He knew other healers who could undo the attack. He survived the violent sting, a testament that the battle for a young healer is never truly over. Elias's experiences show us that the ancient art of the Mangagamat is alive and well, fought today on the same grounds of faith and prayer, but sometimes using the battlefields of social media and online chat rooms. His final, resolute reminder echoes through his story. God is still the most powerful of all. If you have been fascinated by Elias's story and want to hear more about the beginnings of his spiritual journey or the other battles he has faced, please let us know in the comments or on our social media. We always love hearing what keeps you awake at night And speaking of sharing, please visit storiesphilippines.com to tell us about your own experiences with healers, the supernatural, or the mysteries of Filipino tradition. We are always looking for authentic stories, like Elias's, to share with our listeners. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast and share this episode with anyone interested in the true depth of Philippine folklore and spiritual practice. Supporting the podcast helps us bring these unique stories to light. You can find links in the show notes for our Patreon and other ways to support us financially, gaining access to exclusive content and early releases. What do you think is the greater threat to a young healer like Elias? The dark forces they are called to fight, or the ego and conflict within their own community?